I don't think Ryan Day could be more dead wrong in his comments about future schedules for Ohio State in this new college football playoff era. I think he's wildly off base. I think he's got it completely wrong, and I'll tell you why. At Big Ten Media Days, Ryan Day said that it doesn't, quote, doesn't make much sense, end quote, for Ohio State to play a, essentially, premier non-conference game. To be a 10th game against a Power 4 opponent when the Big Ten already plays 9 conference games and the SEC doesn't play 9 conference games, because basically he's saying that unless the Big Ten is going to have 4 guaranteed spots into a 16-team college football playoff, it doesn't make sense for Ohio State to play a Power 4 game out of conference. And I think that's the exact wrong way to look at it. Because, first of all, you're bleeping Ohio State, man. Like, you are going to get the benefit of the doubt 10 times out of 10. If the college football playoff scheduling, the committee deciding who's in and who's out, has really shown us anything over the course of its history, it's that the name brand, the marquee brands, the Blue Bloods, other than, and I don't even think this is an argument in 2024, that Alabama deserved to be in the playoff over the likes of SMU. I don't think that that's really an argument. They didn't. But 10 times out of 10, they're going to err on the side of Power 4, Blue Blood, name brand programs. And you're Ohio State. You don't have to worry about what the selection criteria looks like, because you're a Blue Blood. You're supposed to operate under the premise that you're going to win every game, and it doesn't really matter who's in front of you. You're going to win. That's how you have to have the mindset as the head coach of Ohio State, as the leader of that program. It doesn't matter who's on our schedule. We could put Texas, Notre Dame, and LSU on the non-conference schedule, and I feel like we're going to go 12-0. Has to be the motto, the mantra, and the mindset. So to suggest otherwise is, I think, kind of loser speak, frankly. I also think you have to operate from the idea that you're always going to make the college football playoff, whatever your schedule looks like, because last season you go on to win the national championship. You know what the non-conference schedule looked like? Crap. You know what the non-conference schedule looks like in a couple of years when you have Navy, Charlotte, and Youngstown State and don't have a premier non-conference game? It looks like crap. And you know what? The chances that Ohio State makes the college football playoff in those years and that year to come is still really high. So even if you lose your big-time non-conference game, I think you still have to operate under the guise that, yeah, we're still going to make college football playoff. It's fine. Furthermore, Ryan Day's never lost more than 2 games in a season at Ohio State. Like, the Buckeyes are coming up on that to match that stretch that Florida State had in the late 90s where they didn't lose more than 2 games in a season for, 13 years? Urban Meyer had 7 straight years, and Ryan Day's entering his 7th year as the head coach of the Buckeyes. You're on a pretty good streak here. Do you think that that's going away anytime soon? Because I'm here to tell you, even in a 16-team college football playoff, there's a really good chance 8-4 Ohio State is in the college football playoff. Do you think that you're ever going to lose 4 games in a season? Now, I know that Ryan Day is seeking 2 things by saying what he said was essentially, hey, it makes no sense for us, and therefore it's probably a bad thing for the sport unless the SEC starts playing 9 conference games. That's what he and other Big Ten coaches are after. They are essentially demanding, without just come out and pound on the table, that the SEC play 9 conference games. So you're seeking that, but you're also seeking an insurance policy. And I think that sucks maybe more than anything, is that, like, hey, maybe if we're ever not one of the best teams in the Big Ten, we should still deserve a spot in the playoff because we're in the Big Ten. I will always think that that stinks, that that's a bad way to operate, that the idea that because you have this specific patch on your chest means you deserve to make the college football playoff is stupid. And I'll die on that hill. But he's essentially looking for insurance. That, God forbid, do the wheels fall off some year, and Ohio State does go 8-4 because they scheduled a marquee non-conference game that didn't go their way. They still have access to the college football playoff. I don't think that's great. And I don't think it makes Ryan Day look great because he's not operating from a position of strength by saying, well, it doesn't make sense for us to do that unless you're Ohio State. You, in this situation, are looking at playing a Power 4 non-conference game in a negative light. And I understand that thought process because I'll believe that the committee values the idea of scheduling a tough non-conference schedule the first time they ever do it, because they haven't ever really. I've shared this anecdote before that when somebody had said Oregon one time in the 14 playoff, they were playing pretty good football at the end of the season, but they had lost an early non-conference game to Auburn. And somebody had said, like, well, you know, the committee's going to reward them for scheduling a tough non-conference game rather than if they had just scheduled Portland State and beat them 76-0. And it was on Fox Sports Big Noon Kickoff. And Bob Stoops, who was on the show at the time, was like, okay, yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. And he was right. And it's still right to this day. You're never going to be rewarded for scheduling that non-conference big time game unless you win. And that's just the way that it goes. But again, this to me is the same thing as, like, you know, the old saying that, well, if you throw the ball only three things can happen and two of them are bad. If you play a big time non-conference game, these things can happen and only one of them's good. Well, yeah, if you beat Texas to open the season, that's an undeniable good thing for your college football playoff resume. It's an undeniable good thing for your momentum, your reputation, your expectations going forward. That is the opposite of what Ryan Day is viewing this as. He's viewing it as playing Power 4 non-conference games, unless the SEC is going to move to 9 conference games, is only a negative for Ohio State. But that's only operating as if you're not going to win. And again, you're Ohio State. You should be operating that you're going to win every game, fair or unfair. And I know it's a really shitty way to have your mindset at all times, because it's unrealistic, it's illogical, it's not practical in any sense of the imagination. But that's the standard. And when that's the standard, and this is something I complain about Dabo Swinney all the time, especially like the last 2 years. He's been bitchy at the Clemson fan base of like, you guys don't appreciate what I built for y'all. You built the standard, and now you're not living up to it. That's a you problem. That's not a them problem. And I think this is a somewhat similar situation, that the idea that you need to kind of preserve yourself should you ever lose is never going to be well received. And I think that's the kind of jockeying here in this situation is like, well, you know, what if we lose? I don't think there's an Ohio State fan out there who wants to hear their head coach say, yeah, I know that you want to see big time matchups in prime time against the biggest brands, the blue bloods, the most popular teams in the sport. But what if we lose is never going to be well received. And I know that the goal, and it certainly seems like the Big Ten gave their marching orders to their coaches of, hey, let's peer pressure the SEC into playing a 9-game conference schedule. And I know that that's what Ryan Day's doing. And this is probably a ridiculous overreaction. But it is the truth. You're not operating from a position of strength when you start angling for, let's play more games against the Sun Belt, MAC, Mountain West, Pac-12, etc., instead of the Texas, Alabama, Georgias of the world. Because right now, Ohio State has a fan engagement problem, whether they want to admit it or not. They are not selling out marquee, or they are only selling out marquee matchups for the most part. your big-time non-conference game against Michigan, game against Penn State. Maybe there's a game in the conference that is, a Michigan State. It's going to be in prime time, or an Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, etc. But the games against Maryland, Northwestern, Indiana, Illinois, Grambling, Ohio, Western Michigan, etc., are not selling out. And you also have a fan base that's in revolt right now because they want to see their team play games at night in fun, interesting, exciting atmospheres. I'm on the record that I think noon is prime time on Saturday, but and the fans are the ones who set the atmosphere, so it's ridiculous to complain otherwise. But you have fans who this absolutely matters to them. They want to play and see their team play big-time games against big-time opponents in big-time atmospheres, and scheduling the likes of Youngstown State and Navy and Charlotte instead of Texas, Georgia, Alabama, etc., is not what they want to see. And so when you have the idea that we have to play an 8th or 9th home game every season because we need the money, and then you're not selling those games out because the fans don't give a shit that you're playing these lackadaisical, no-name schools, your Nevadas and Charlottes and New Hampshires. They don't want to see games against Kent State. They want to see games against Tennessee and Notre Dame and Texas. Now, he said, give him credit, that the games we've got scheduled, they're going to play Alabama. They're going to play Georgia. They got Boston College on the schedule. I don't know if Boston College is going to be a great opponent by the time that game comes around, but it's on the schedule. And he says, we're not going to remove those games from the schedule. But after that, unless everybody else is playing 9 conference games, it doesn't make much sense for us to do that. I think it does make a bunch of sense to do that because you get to have the high ground if you keep doing it. If you keep saying, and I think this is how you have to operate, is I'm not afraid to play anybody, anytime, anywhere, under any circumstances. We don't care. We're Ohio State. And I think it's somewhat difficult for Ryan Day to be flat out borderline arrogant, to be frank. But I think you have to operate from a place of arrogant. We're Ohio State and you're not. We're the Big Ten and you're not. So we're going to keep playing 10 conference games. We're going to keep playing 9 conference games, and we're going to keep scheduling a Power 4 non-conference game. So we play 10 Power 4 opponents while your weakling ass plays 8. When we're playing Penn State the week before Thanksgiving, you're playing Mercer. That's a hell of a card to have in your back pocket. And for Ryan Day to just kind of flat out dismiss it, throw it away, throw the towel in and say, well, it doesn't benefit us. The hell it doesn't. The hell it doesn't. I think he's dead wrong on this. And I want to know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you want to see Ohio State, or any big-time team for that matter, play big-time games? Or would you rather see those crappy Group of 5 FCS games? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.